Welcome to Once Upon a Dream, your haven for soothing bedtime stories that bring calm and magic to your nights. If you found calm or joy in our stories and would like to support the channel, buying us a virtual coffee is a wonderful way to keep this dream alive. Thank you for being part of this journey. Your support means the world to us. Good evening. My name is Ben, and I'll be your guide tonight as we journey together into deep relaxation and restful sleep. Take a deep breath in through your nose, and as you exhale, feel the tension in your body begin to melt away. Allow your eyes to gently close and bring your attention to the soothing rhythm of your breath. With each inhale, invite calm and stillness into your body. And with each exhale, let go of any worries or thoughts from the day. Relaxing every muscle, every joint, and every cell. You are safe. You are calm. And you are ready to drift into a deep and restful sleep. In the misty embrace of the Adirondack Mountains, where autumn leaves turn golden and mist cloaks the quiet forest, two souls arrive at a crossroads. A week of relentless rain blurs the boundaries between solitude and connection. They discover that sometimes the most beautiful stories begin with a simple rain check. Chapter 1: Finding Shelter. The rain began as Sarah Mitchell turned onto the winding mountain road. Each drop a tiny blessing washing away the city she'd left behind. Her fingers relaxed their grip on the steering wheel as the afternoon light softened through layers of clouds. Nature's own dimmer switch easing the transition into her week of solitude. The patter of raindrops against her windshield settled into a rhythm that matched her gradually slowing heartbeat. A gentle reminder that she was putting miles between herself and the life she'd almost settled for. Through the misty veil, autumn colors glowed like old jewelry in a velvet box. Garnets, topazes, and fading gold leaves, painting the Adirondack hillsides. Her grandmother had always said that rain made colors truer. And as Sarah watched the wet leaves shine in the gathering dusk, she could finally understand why. Everything seemed more honest in the rain, including the words she'd been carrying in her heart for weeks, waiting to spill onto paper. The cabin emerged from the forest, like an answer to an unspoken prayer. Weathered wood and stone, wearing a cloak of climbing vines. Windows glowing with warm welcome against the deepening gray of evening. It looked exactly like the photos from the rental website, yet somehow more real. More significant now that it would be her sanctuary for the week ahead. A place to write the letters that would unravel the careful plans she'd woven. Dear John, letters to her fiancé, to wedding vendors, to the version of herself she'd been trying to become. Sarah allowed herself a slow, deep breath as she parked beneath the sheltering branches of an ancient maple. The scent of wet earth and autumn leaves drifted through her car's vents, earthy and grounding. From her bag, she pulled out her notebook, the nice one she'd bought specially for this week, its leather cover smooth beneath her fingers. The first blank page weighted like fresh snow, ready for footprints. As she gathered her courage to step out into the rain, another set of headlights swept through the growing darkness. A rugged SUV pulled up beside her. Its arrival as unexpected as the sudden gust of wind that scattered leaves across her windshield. Sarah's heart skipped, not from fear, surprisingly, but from a flutter of something that felt almost like anticipation. Through the rain-streaked window, she caught sight of the driver. Tall, with a camera bag slung over one shoulder. Moving with the unhurried grace of someone accustomed to watching the world through a lens. Their eyes met across the rain-painted space between their vehicles. And Sarah felt something shift in the atmosphere. Subtle as the change in pressure before a storm. gentle as the fade of twilight into evening. When he approached her car, she found herself rolling down her window without hesitation. The sound of rain grew louder, a soothing, white noise that filled the space between them. "I believe," he said, his voice carrying the warm roughness of someone who hadn't spoken much that day. "We might have a rather interesting situation on our hands." Sarah found herself smiling, surprising herself with the genuineness of it. The rain continued its gentle percussion on the roof of her car. And somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled across the mountains like a lullaby. Whatever confusion had brought them both to this same cabin on this same rainy evening felt less like an inconvenience and more like the opening notes of a song she didn't yet know but somehow remembered. "Yes," she replied, reaching for her cabin confirmation on her phone. "I believe we just might." The rain settled in around them. Autumn leaves dancing on the wind as they began to unravel the mystery that had brought them together. And though Sarah had come seeking solitude, something in the stranger's weathered camera bag and gentle eyes told her that perhaps the letters she needed to write might tell a different story than the one she'd planned. Chapter 2. No Turning Back. Sarah pulled up the rental confirmation on her phone with the same quiet determination that had brought her to the mountains. The stranger, who had introduced himself as Michael O'Connor, stood patiently under the porch overhang, his own phone glowing softly in the gathering darkness. The rain had grown heavier, drumming against the cabin's tin roof in a steady crescendo. October 4th through 11th, she read aloud, her voice barely rising above the storm. Reserved through Mountain Haven direct bookings. The confirmation number and receipt glowed reassuringly on her screen. A digital promise of sanctuary. October 4th through 11th. Michael echoed, a note of gentle bewilderment in his voice. But mine's through Valleyside Rentals. He turned his phone toward her, showing an equally valid confirmation. Sarah stepped out of her car, the cold rain kissing her cheeks as she hurried to join him on the porch. The wooden boards creaked beneath her feet, welcoming despite the confusion. Through the windows, she could see the cabin's interior. Warm wood walls, a stone fireplace, and, surprisingly, two separate sets of fresh linens folded neatly on the coffee table. "Let me try calling Lucy," Michael offered, already scrolling through his contacts. The call connected, rang twice, then dissolved into static. He pulled the phone from his ear, frowning at the single bar of service that flickered like a candle in wind. Sarah's own phone showed the same weakness in signal. As she watched, the last bar disappeared entirely, leaving her screen as blank as the darkening sky. A flash of lightning illuminated the mountain road they'd traveled, now transformed into a gleaming river of mud and fallen leaves. "I should," she began, taking a step toward her car, though the thought of navigating those treacherous curves in the dark made her stomach tighten. Before she could finish, a deep rumble of thunder rolled through the valley, and the rain seemed to double its efforts, as if nature itself was voting against departure. Michael lowered his phone, his expression thoughtful. "I don't think either of us should attempt that road tonight." His voice carried no demand, just quiet concern. "The forecast I checked earlier warned of flash floods in the valley." As if confirming his words, Sarah's phone chimed one final time before losing signal completely. A weather alert warning of severe conditions throughout the night. She thought of her carefully packed bags, the letters she'd planned to write, the solitude she'd hoped would help her find clarity. The universe, it seemed, had other plans. "The cabin's certainly large enough," she found herself saying, surprising herself with the calmness in her voice. "And there are 2 bedrooms." Through the window, she could see the neat stack of linens again. Perhaps Lucy had somehow known, had tried to prepare for this overlap neither of them had expected. Michael nodded, relief softening the worry lines around his eyes. "I'm happy to take the room furthest from the kitchen, give you more privacy." He gestured to his camera bag, still slung across his shoulder. "I'll likely be up early anyway, hoping to catch the stormlight." A photographer, Sarah realized. Something about that detail made him seem less like a stranger and more like a character stepping into the story she'd come here to discover. The wind carried a spray of rain onto the porch, and they both instinctively stepped closer to the door. "Shall we?" she asked, reaching for the key she'd found earlier in the lockbox. The brass felt warm against her palm, as though it had been waiting for this moment. As they stepped into the cabin's embrace, Sarah glanced back through the window at the mountain road. The steady rain had begun to pool on the unpaved surface, turning the dirt into slick mud, while small streams of water carved paths down the steep incline. What had been a manageable drive up was quietly transforming into a treacherous descent. But as she watched Michael move carefully through the space, respecting its corners and shadows, she felt an unexpected sense of peace settle over her. Sometimes, she thought, safety could be found in the very circumstances we tried to avoid. The storm settled in around them, a constant reminder that, for now, at least, they were sharing this unexpected chapter together. Chapter 3. Lost Signals. The first hour in the cabin passed in a quiet dance of attempted phone calls. Sarah sat by the bay window, watching the rain while her phone searched for service. Each bar that appeared felt like a small victory, only to disappear moments later like a mirage. I managed to get through to Lucy's voicemail, Michael said from his spot near the stone fireplace, where he'd discovered a pocket of weak signal. But it cut out before I could leave a message. He lowered his phone, the screen's soft glow reflecting in his eyes. The forecast came through, though. The storm's settling in for the night. Sarah nodded, watching the rainfall blur the forest into watercolors. Her own phone showed 3 failed attempts to contact Lucy and 2 messages to Andy that refused to send. Perhaps it was better this way. What could she say to her fiancé that wouldn't sound like an excuse? Trapped in a cabin with a stranger seemed like a plot from one of the romance novels she kept hidden in her desk drawer at school. The cabin creaked gently around them, its wooden bones adjusting to the evening's cooling air. Through the window, the unpaved road had disappeared beneath a sheen of water, confirming their earlier decision to stay put. I have service. Sarah straightened suddenly, her phone showing 2 bars. Her fingers moved quickly over the screen, trying to send a message to Lucy before the signal vanished. Dear Lucy, there seems to be a booking overlap at the cabin. Both. The message hung unfinished as her screen returned to its empty state. Michael looked up from his own phone with a quiet understanding. The mountains have their own way of enforcing solitude, he said, his voice carrying a hint of something that might have been resignation or relief. Even when we don't plan for it. As evening deepened around them, their phones eventually gave up their electronic vigil, screens dimming with low battery warnings. Sarah placed hers on the kitchen counter, screen down, surprised by how little the loss of connection bothered her. The constant rain had created a different kind of quiet. Not the silence of isolation, but the gentle white noise of nature claiming the night. There's a general store at the bottom of the mountain, Michael mentioned, his voice fitting naturally into the cabin's hushed atmosphere. Run by a local named Sam. Could see his lights from the switchback when I was driving up. Just around the corner. But no way to reach it in this weather. Sarah moved to the window where she could just make out a distant, warm glow through the rain. The store's porch light, a beacon of civilization beneath them. Something about knowing there were other people nearby, even if unreachable for now, made their isolation feel more like a pause than a predicament. For now, the cabin held them in its shelter. Two strangers brought together by a digital glitch and a persistent rain. Learning to navigate not just shared space, but shared silence. As the last of the daylight faded from the windows, they would soon need to face the practical matters of their first night as unexpected roommates. But for now, Sarah let herself sink into the peculiar peace of being unreachable. Watching the rain paint patterns on the glass while their phones lay quiet. Their messages to the outside world suspended like leaves in amber. Chapter 4. Settling in. Evening had drawn its gentle veil over the cabin when Sarah and Michael finally faced the practical matters of their shared space. The rain's steady percussion provided a peaceful backdrop as they stood in the hallway, regarding the two-bedroom doors with careful consideration. "You should take this one," Michael offered, gesturing to the larger room with the bay window. "It has the better writing desk." He'd noticed her notebook earlier, though he hadn't asked about its purpose. Sarah appreciated both the gesture and his discretion. She found herself studying the way he held himself. Slightly turned, as if to make himself less present in the narrow hallway. His camera bag still hung at his side, a constant companion that seemed to ground him in the unfamiliar space. "Are you sure?" she asked, though her hand was already reaching for the doorknob. "I don't mind the other room." "The light's better in that second bedroom for early morning photography anyway," he replied with a small smile that suggested he was offering truth rather than mere politeness. "I noticed the way it falls through the east window. And, like I mentioned before, being further from the kitchen suits me fine for those early starts." They moved through the practical details with quiet efficiency. Fresh linens from the cabinet, spare blankets discovered in a trunk, towels divided. The cabin's previous preparations for two separate guests now served their unexpected cohabitation. Sarah found herself oddly comforted by the domestic routine of it all. There was something soothing in the simple act of making up a bed, of arranging her belongings in drawers that smelled of cedar. Through the wall, she could hear Michael's measured movements in the other room. The soft sounds of someone trying to exist quietly in shared space. In the bathroom, they orchestrated an awkward but amiable dance of establishing territory. Her toiletry bag on the left side of the vanity, his razor and simple kit on the right. The mirror above watched their careful choreography with silent amusement. "I'll try not to wake you with the coffee maker," Michael added as they finished their arrangements. "Oh, I'm a heavy sleeper," Sarah replied with a small smile. "And the rain will probably drown out any morning noises anyway." They parted ways with soft goodnights, each retreating to their respective rooms. Sarah stood for a moment in her doorway, watching the rain trace patterns on the bay window. The notebook she'd brought to write her Dear John letters sat unopened on the desk, its purpose feeling somehow distant in the gentle quiet of the evening. From beyond her wall came the muffled sounds of Michael settling in. Not intrusive, just present enough to remind her she wasn't alone. The floorboards creaked beneath him like old strings on a guitar, playing a gentle tune of human movement. As Sarah changed for bed, she caught her reflection in the window. She looked different somehow, as if the mountain air had already begun to reshape her. Or perhaps it was simply the strange piece of finding comfort in an uncomfortable situation. The rain continued its steady song against the roof as she slipped beneath the quilt. Her phone lay dark and silent on the nightstand, its usual glow of notifications absent. In its place, the soft sounds of the storm filled her room. Rain on tin, wind in trees, and the distant rumble of thunder moving through the valley. Somewhere in the cabin, a board creaked beneath careful steps. Sarah smiled into her pillow, realizing that the awkwardness she'd expected to feel had transformed into something else. A gentle awareness of shared solitude. Like two people reading different books in the same quiet room. Sleep came easily, carried on the wings of rain, and the strange comfort of knowing that beyond her wall, another soul was finding their place in this unexpected sanctuary.